The stars stretched out in their usual cold indifference across the dark expanse of the galaxy. The Galactic Empire's colossal network of worlds and systems was a well-oiled machine, its might unmatched, its rule absolute. Nothing could disrupt the smooth progression of their dominance, not even the faintest whisper from the farthest reaches of space. But something unexpected happened on a routine transmission to the Imperial High Command, something no one could have predicted. A signal from a forgotten corner of the galaxy, a voice no one had heard in centuries, a human voice once thought to be lost forever. The message was simple and brief, only a few lines of text that repeated over and over, and yet the words cut through the fabric of the Empire's arrogance. Like a blade to soft flesh, humanity's final warning to the galaxy: your worlds will burn. And then the transmission ended abruptly, as if the sender had vanished as quickly as they had appeared. The Imperial officials in the room glanced at each other with a mixture of disbelief and mild annoyance. At the intrusion, they had better things to do than listen to the ramblings of some misguided survivor from the long-dead human race. In a lavish chamber filled with grand portraits of past emperors and maps detailing the farthest reaches of the Empire, the Emperor himself sat upon his throne, his eyes narrowing as he read the message. Once more the corner of his lips curled into a disdainful sneer. Humanity had been crushed ages ago. What was left of them now were nothing but myths and legends, children's stories told to amuse the masses. Their homeworld Earth had been obliterated in the final days of the war centuries ago. There was no threat, no reason to fear their return, and yet a strange unease lingered in the Emperor's mind. But he quickly dismissed it as a passing thought, a mere glitch in the system, and ordered the message to be erased from all Imperial records. The Imperial Command, however, was less dismissive of the transmission than their emperor had been. A group of officers in the lower ranks decided to investigate further, led by Commodore Orcs, who had long harbored suspicions about the human race's final demise. They tracked the source of the signal to an uncharted sector of space, far beyond the reach of known Imperial routes, a place where even the most advanced scanners could find no trace of anything remarkable. The sector had been deemed unimportant by Imperial strategists, its only value being a quiet point in the void used for military patrols. No one expected anything of significance to be hiding there. But something was different this time. The signal was coming from a world thought to have been eradicated in the war with humanity thousands of years ago. It wasn't possible, yet the coordinates were irrefutable. The sensors pinged with undeniable accuracy. This could not be a coincidence. And as Commodore Orcs and his team prepared to investigate further, an unsettling thought began to form in his mind. What if humanity hadn't died out? What if they had only been waiting for the perfect moment to strike back against the Empire and reclaim their rightful place among the stars? The thought gnawed at him, an unsettling feeling he couldn't shake off. With the fleet already on its way to the mysterious coordinates, the silence of space seemed to close in tighter. With every passing second, the words of the message echoed in his mind: your worlds will burn. And for the first time in many years, Orcs wondered if the Empire had underestimated the humans more than they ever realized. Long before the Empire's reach stretched across the stars, humanity was a force to be reckoned with. Their technology unmatched, their culture diverse, and their hunger for exploration boundless. They were once the proud rulers of Earth, a world that thrived with life and knowledge. But then came the war, the great war that shattered the galaxy and drove humanity to the brink of extinction. The Empire saw them as a threat and wiped them out with ruthless efficiency. Their cities crumbled, their fleet scattered, and Earth itself was reduced to rubble, lost to history as a cautionary tale of what happens when a species grows too ambitious. The few who survived were forced to flee their homeworld, their civilization torn apart by the unrelenting power of the Empire. Their survivors scattered across the stars like dust in the wind, forgotten by all but the most ancient of records. The Empire had been so thorough in their conquest that humanity's name was erased from nearly every official history. No one knew they existed, no one knew the true extent of their strength or their potential, but that didn't mean they were gone, not by a long shot. In the dark corners of the galaxy, the scattered remnants of humanity rebuilt their societies in secret, far from the watchful eyes of the Empire. On remote planets and hidden moons, they forged new worlds where they could live without fear of imperial oppression. They lived in the shadows building their technology, and their fleets in silence, learning from the mistakes of their past and perfecting the very weapons that had once been used against them. Earth's survivors had evolved over the centuries. Their technology had far outpaced the systems used by the Empire. Their scientists had discovered ways to harness the power of stars themselves, bending the very forces of nature to their will, creating energy weapons that could rip apart entire fleets or cause suns to collapse upon themselves in the blink of an eye. They had turned their tragedy into a weapon, their pain into power, and now they were ready to return. The humans had never forgotten the Empire's cruelty, never forgiven the cold destruction of their homeworld, their families, their civilization. Their ancestors had built empires that spanned galaxies and created wonders that would last for eternity, but the Empire had wiped it all away with one stroke and left them to scatter like leaves in the wind. Their rage had simmered in the silence of space for centuries, waiting for the moment when they could strike back, reclaim their legacy, and show the galaxy what a mistake the Empire had made in assuming their extinction. They had never given up on the dream of reclaiming their place in the stars, and now that dream was beginning to take shape once more. No longer were they the oppressed, scattered remnants of a fallen race. Now they were a rising power poised to reignite their place in the galactic order, and their return would shake the foundations of the Empire to its core. Across the dark void of space, human colonies began to mobilize their fleets, preparing for the inevitable war ahead. They had been waiting for this moment for generations, and now the time had come. Their first step was simple. They needed to remind the galaxy of their existence, to let the Empire know that the long-forgotten species was still alive, and that their final message would not be ignored. They had a warning to deliver, and the galaxy would listen whether it wanted to or not. The Empire, still shaken by the mysterious transmission, quickly dismissed it as an isolated incident, a forgotten relic from a species long erased from history. But deep down, uncertainty lingered among some of the higher ranks. Commodore Orcs, leading the investigation into the signal's origin, felt it creeping through him like an itch he couldn't scratch. There was something more to this warning than anyone realized, something more than just an idle threat from a non-existent race. Despite the Empire's confidence, something was wrong. The sensors on board Orcs' command ship began to pick up irregularities as they neared the coordinates. First, it was small, just a subtle blip here or there, an odd fluctuation in the background radiation of space. But as they got closer to the source, those irregularities grew more intense, more disruptive. The ship's navigation systems began glitching, random power surges sparked in the control room, and every crew member began to feel the weight of the silence around them. Then they saw it. A fleet, hanging in the blackness like ghosts of the past. Long-forgotten designs, starships that looked like relics from an ancient era, yet they were unmistakably human. No mistaking the signature. These ships bore the old human insignia, faded but still recognizable from the forgotten archives of the Empire. These were ships built by humanity before their fall, now resurrected and fully operational. They weren't ghosts. They were alive, and they were waiting. Commodore Orcs' blood ran cold. The implications were impossible to ignore. How had they survived? How had they rebuilt their fleets? And more terrifying still, how had they hid this from the Empire for so long? There was no time to consider the answers. The first strike had already begun. Without warning, the human fleet launched a single devastating salvo. The energy discharge tore through space, a beam so intense that it lit up the entire sector with its brilliance. The flagship of Orcs' fleet, the Aurora, was struck first. The once mighty ship was blasted apart, as if it were made of paper, its massive hull disintegrating in a matter of moments. The shockwave sent the rest of Orcs' ships into disarray, their shields collapsing before they could even retaliate. Chaos erupted. Crew members scrambled to regain control of their ships, but there was no time. The humans were far too precise. The Empire had thought it was ready for anything, its technology unmatched, its fleets unparalleled. But they were not ready for this. The humans did not fight like any species they had encountered before. They fought with a brutal efficiency, with a precision that suggested they had not only survived, but thrived in the shadows of the Empire's rule. Their weapons were unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. Energy blasts capable of piercing shields with ease. Their ships could phase in and out of sight, becoming intangible for brief moments before striking again, leaving the Empire's fleet helpless in their wake. Within hours, the first Imperial defenses had crumbled. The surviving ships fled, retreating back to Imperial space, but not before the humans delivered one last message. A transmission sent to every corner of the Empire. A voice now clearer, more defined. Your worlds will burn. The Empire's leadership scrambled for answers. This was no simple raid. It was an invasion, an attack on a scale that the Empire had never expected. And it was only the beginning. Commodore Orcs, one of the few survivors, reported back to Imperial Command with grim news. He could not explain how they had been so unprepared. He could not understand how the humans had come back. But one thing was certain. The warning was real, and the humans had the power to back it up. The Empire had underestimated them for far too long. And now the Empire would pay the price. As the shattered remnants of the Imperial fleet limped back to their home systems, the reality of the situation began to set in. A deep fear took root within the Empire's leadership. Something had gone horribly wrong. The humans, whom they had thought wiped from the galaxy, had not only survived but returned stronger than ever. Their warning had not been an idle threat, it was a promise, and the Emperor's arrogance had made it all too clear that they were the most dangerous force the galaxy had ever underestimated. The first strike was merely the opening move. The humans were not content with just hitting a single fleet. They were now targeting the Empire's heartlands. Entire sectors of Imperial space were going dark without explanation. Planets once thought secure were now losing contact with Imperial Command, and communications were disrupted across vast stretches of the galaxy. Even the Empire's most advanced scouts could find no trace of the attackers, yet the destruction they left behind was undeniable. Imperial Command ordered a full mobilization. The galaxy's finest fleets were dispatched in a desperate bid to hunt down the elusive enemy, but they came up empty. No matter how many times they scoured the space where humanity had struck, there was nothing to find. No remains, no wreckage, not even a hint that the attack had occurred. It was as if the humans had simply vanished back into the shadows from where they came. But in the depths of the Imperial archives, something caught the attention of an old scientist named Dr. Corrin, who had long been skeptical of the Empire's view on humanity. He was a relic of an earlier time when the human race had still been a threat, and he remembered stories passed down by his colleagues of the weapons humanity had once wielded and of the strange technology they had developed to harness the power of stars themselves. He knew that whatever was happening now was no coincidence. Something was stirring within the galaxy, something that the Empire was not prepared for. Dr. Corrin's findings were disturbing. Humanity had always been able to manipulate energy in ways that other species could not, and over the centuries they had refined their methods to an unimaginable level. Their greatest weapon had always been their mastery of stellar energy, the ability to control the forces that governed entire solar systems, to redirect the power of stars themselves for use. As a weapon he had believed the knowledge lost, but now it seemed that the humans had perfected it beyond anyone's understanding. With the threat growing ever closer, the Emperor convened a council of his most trusted generals and strategists to discuss how to combat this new foe. The Emperor was furious with his military leaders for failing to recognize the danger in time, and now he demanded solutions, but the generals were at a loss. They had no idea how to deal with an enemy that could manipulate the very fabric of space and time itself. Meanwhile, far from the Empire's reach, the humans continued to strike without warning, their attacks more calculated, more precise with each passing day. The unexplainable phenomena grew in frequency. Entire systems vanished without a trace, entire fleets wiped from existence in the blink of an eye. The humans weren't just sending a message, they were methodically unraveling the Empire's grip on the galaxy piece by piece. It was becoming clear that this was not just an attack. It was a war that had been planned for centuries. In the silence of space, the Empire's empire crumbled further, unable to comprehend or counter the threat they had never even seen coming. The days of their unchecked dominance were coming to an end, and they could feel it. The humans, once thought extinct, were now the galaxy's greatest nightmare, and there was no way to stop them. They had learned from their mistakes and had returned not to survive, but to take back what was rightfully theirs. The Empire's worlds would burn, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The Empire was in chaos. Systems that had once been firmly under Imperial control were now slipping through its fingers like sand. Every day brought a new catastrophe. More fleets lost, more planets abandoned. It seemed as though the humans had found a way to manipulate not just their weapons, but the very stars themselves, twisting energy to bring destruction from a distance. No matter how much the Empire tried to bolster its defenses, no matter how many fleets were mobilized, it never seemed enough. They were always a step behind, always reacting. There were whispers, too, growing louder, that humanity had long known this moment was coming and had been preparing for centuries. This wasn't just a war, it was a reckoning. In the Imperial capital, fear ran like a poison through the veins of the highest ranks. The Emperor, once a figure of towering authority, now appeared frail and distant. His once unwavering confidence had crumbled under the weight of this unforeseen threat, and those around him sensed his vulnerability. His advisors, generals, and the elites who had once worshipped his decisions now found themselves questioning him. The air was thick with uncertainty, with doubt, and there were even murmurs of betrayal. Voices that wondered if the Emperor's arrogance and blind faith in his empire had been the very cause of their downfall. In the Imperial Palace, a secret meeting was held behind closed doors, a meeting that would alter the course of the galaxy's future. General Ilara Zorth, one of the Empire's most respected military leaders, stood among the conspirators. Her reputation was forged in the blood of countless campaigns, and her strategic brilliance had earned her the loyalty of the Imperial Army. She knew that the Empire's leadership was failing, that their inability to understand or react to humanity's return was nothing short of catastrophic. Something had to change, and soon. "We cannot afford to let this continue," General Zorth said, her voice steady yet laced with urgency. "The Emperor's response has been nothing short of disastrous. His refusal to take humanity seriously has already cost us 3 entire fleets. We cannot wait any longer. If we don't act now, there will be nothing left to save." Around her, murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Admiral Verlin, a high-ranking officer known for his tactical expertise, leaned forward, his voice cold and calculating. "The Emperor will never accept a direct assault on the heart of his command. He is too blinded by pride, too obsessed with maintaining his image. But we see the truth. Humanity is coming for us. They won't stop until every star system under our control is in ashes." General Zorth nodded, her face hardening. "Then it is time we make the first move. We take control. The Emperor must be removed. We cannot allow his weakness to be our undoing." A quiet but dangerous agreement passed among the officers present. They had all seen enough to understand that the Empire's traditional methods of warfare were useless against an enemy who could collapse suns or make entire fleets vanish. Humanity had exposed the cracks in their empire's power, and now they would exploit those cracks to seize control from within. The plan was simple: isolate the Emperor, place him under house arrest, and install a new leader, one who understood the magnitude of the threat. General Zorth was the obvious choice, respected by the military and feared by the political elites. She would lead the Empire into a new era, an era where they would no longer deny the reality of humanity's return. But to do so, they would need to act quickly, quietly, before the Emperor could realize what was happening. As the conspirators departed, each knowing their role in the coming coup, the tension in the air grew palpable. Outside, the galaxy trembled. Humanity's attacks were intensifying. Entire sectors were being reduced to nothing, their once thriving worlds now barren wastelands. The time for hesitation was over. The Empire's leadership had failed, and now the true battle for the galaxy was about to begin, not between the humans and the Empire, but for control of the Empire itself. The final stage was set. The human threat would be dealt with. But first, the Empire's own corruption had to be purged. The Emperor's palace, once a symbol of power and invincibility, had become a den of whispered rumors and shifting allegiances. General Zoreth's coup was set in motion. Her allies within the military had already begun securing key positions, neutralizing Imperial forces loyal to the Emperor. The plan was unfolding swiftly, but Zoreth's mind was focused on a single, undeniable truth. Humanity's return had changed everything. The coup would only be the beginning. The true challenge lay in facing the growing threat posed by the humans. They were relentless, precise, and unlike any enemy the Empire had ever encountered. While the conspiracy within the Empire's walls spread like wildfire, the humans were not idle. Across the galaxy, their fleets moved with ruthless efficiency, striking at weak points in Imperial territory, leaving entire sectors in ashes. The Empire's best warships were being reduced to debris by weapons they couldn't even begin to understand. Stars blinked out, systems turned to graveyards, and Imperial commanders could do little but watch in horror as their once mighty fleet crumbled. The humans were doing more than exacting revenge. They were systematically dismantling the foundation of the Empire's power. Each strike was not random. It was strategic, targeting the heart of Imperial strength. Energy-rich systems that powered the Empire's war machines were destroyed. Colonies that provided essential resources to sustain Imperial forces vanished. The humans knew exactly where to hit, and they hit without mercy. The Empire's vaunted fleets, some of the most technologically advanced in the galaxy, were helpless in the face of humanity's newfound power. What the Empire hadn't understood, what they had dismissed as fantasy, was now undeniable. Humanity had weaponized the very stars. And then, humanity's ultimate message was delivered again, not as a threat, but as a declaration. Your worlds will burn. General Zoreth watched it all unfold from her war room, the glow of holoscreens reflecting off her grim face. The intelligence reports came in faster now, each one worse than the last. It wasn't just the strikes on isolated systems. The humans were beginning to strike at the Empire's core, planetary capitals, military strongholds, and shipyards. The places that had once been untouchable were now under siege. And the most disturbing fact of all was that humanity's attacks were being coordinated from the shadows. There was no sign of a central command, no known fleet that could be targeted. The humans seemed to be everywhere at once. Zoreth knew something had to change. The Empire's forces could no longer play defense. They needed a counteroffensive, a show of power that would restore the galaxy's confidence in Imperial might. She had the strength of the Empire behind her, but the clock was ticking. Every minute spent bickering with Imperial officials was another minute lost to humanity's relentless advance. Zoreth issued the order to launch the counterattack, mobilizing every available fleet and every reserve they had. It was time to stop waiting, time to show humanity the true might of the Empire. They would launch a multi-pronged assault on the human colonies, hoping to strike at their sources of power and bring an end to their rebellion once and for all. But even as the fleets began to assemble, the humans had already anticipated the move. Zoreth didn't know it yet, but their counteroffensive would soon be met with a devastating response. The humans had been watching, waiting for the right moment to strike back. And when they did, they would unleash a force unlike anything the Empire had ever experienced. As the Empire's fleets began to move, Zoreth felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The humans had never once been desperate. They had been patient, calculating, and now, humanity's patience was about to break. The counterattack was already in motion, but the galaxy would soon learn just how far humanity was willing to go to reclaim what was once theirs. The Empire was about to face the consequences of its own mistakes, and no amount of firepower would be enough to stop the coming storm. The Emperor's once grand vision of an invincible empire was now nothing more than a crumbling monument to arrogance. With General Zoreth's coup tightening its grip on Imperial command, the Empire's fleets assembled for their most daring counteroffensive yet. The war was no longer a series of isolated raids. The humans had systematically torn the heart from the Empire's core, and now it was time to face them in the full scale of battle. Zoreth believed that this attack would finally break humanity's resolve, that the full might of the Empire would crush their scattered colonies and restore the status quo. She was wrong. In the vastness of space, both sides prepared for the final confrontation. Imperial fleets, numbering in the hundreds, hung poised like a mighty fist, ready to strike the heart of the human resistance. On the other side, the human forces had gathered as well, but their fleet was not a sprawling mass like the Empire's. Instead, it was a precise, tightly coordinated array of ships, each one outfitted with technology that made the Imperial Armada look ancient by comparison. The humans had learned from their failures, from the downfall of their homeworld, and now they were prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice to reclaim their legacy. The battle began in the dead of space, far from the watchful eyes of the Galactic core. The first exchange of fire was brutal. Imperial ships, their enormous battle cruisers bristling with weapons, launched volleys of energy blasts toward the human fleet, but the humans were ready. Their ships phased in and out of sight, flickering like ghosts, each one using the advanced cloaking technology the Empire had thought impossible. The Empire's first volleys passed harmlessly through empty space as humanity's counterstrikes slammed into the heart of the Imperial fleet. Zoreth's eyes narrowed as she watched the chaos unfold. Her flagship, the Vindicator, had led the charge, but now it was surrounded by a storm of human vessels, each one striking with pinpoint precision. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. The humans weren't merely attacking, they were anticipating every move. Their ships darted in and out of range, attacking vulnerable spots on the larger Imperial vessels before disappearing again, as if mocking the Empire's every attempt to retaliate. It was clear. The humans were no longer the underdogs. They had grown into something much more formidable, an enemy that knew how to manipulate space itself, and the Empire, despite all its might, was outmatched. The true terror of the battle came when the humans revealed their final weapon, a network of energy disruptors scattered across the battlefield, each one powerful enough to collapse a star. In a coordinated strike, these devices activated in unison, sending shockwaves of destabilized energy through the Imperial fleet. In moments, entire battle cruisers and destroyers were torn apart from the inside, their reactors overloading in a violent explosion. The once formidable Imperial Armada began to disintegrate under the weight of humanity's wrath. Zoreth, watching from the command deck, was horrified. She had underestimated the humans, had thought their victories were flukes, mere tricks of advanced technology. But now she could see the true scale of their power. The Empire was crumbling before her eyes, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Meanwhile, far from the front line, the Emperor was in hiding, locked away in his palace as his empire burned. The final push to remove him from power was already underway, and there was nothing he could do to prevent it. The humans had won, not just a battle, but the war. In the depths of space, the final acts of the human uprising played out with terrifying clarity. The humans had already begun to broadcast their victory to the galaxy, their message echoing across every comms channel. Your worlds will burn. The war was over, and humanity had reclaimed its place in the stars. The Empire's days were numbered. Its greatest fleets had fallen, its leadership shattered. As the last remnants of the Imperial command scrambled to regroup, they knew one thing for certain. The galaxy had changed forever. The flames of human vengeance had consumed their empire, and now nothing could put them out. The aftermath of the final battle was felt across the galaxy. The once feared empire, the dominant force that had controlled the stars for centuries, was now a shadow of its former self. In its place, humanity had risen, its fleets victorious, its resolve unshakable. The Empire's worlds, once brimming with life and power, lay in ruins, their skies filled with the remnants of warships and the echoes of a once great civilization that had failed to recognize its own fragility. General Zorith, now a fugitive, stood in the shattered command room of the Vindicator, her eyes fixed on the decimated fleet. The last remnants of Imperial command had failed to escape the human onslaught. Her officers were gone, most of the Imperial military had been scattered or destroyed, and she knew there would be no turning back. The war was over. Humanity had won. The human fleet hovered in the silence of space, their ships now at the center of the galaxy's attention. There was no need for grand displays of power, no need to continue a war that had already been won. Humanity's message had been clear. They had come to reclaim their rightful place, to remind the galaxy that they had never truly been gone. And now, they would rebuild. On Earth's surface, the ruins of the ancient human homeworld stood as both a testament to their resilience and a symbol of their return. The humans had gathered in unity, both the survivors of the scattered colonies and those who had long prepared for this day. They stood among the wreckage of their world, looking toward the stars with a sense of purpose. Earth, once reduced to rubble by the Empire's wrath, was beginning to heal. But this time, humanity would not simply rebuild what had been lost. They would rise stronger, more unified, more determined than ever before. A new council was formed, one that spanned across every human colony. Leaders from every corner of the galaxy came together, not to claim power, but to create a new order, one rooted in justice, unity, and the protection of their people. No longer would humanity allow itself to be wiped out by those who sought to dominate the galaxy. They would be the force that defined the future. And the galaxy, once ruled by the Empire's iron grip, was forced to accept the new reality. The remnants of the Imperial military were hunted down, their power dissipating like smoke in the wind. The galaxy's systems, which had long bowed to the Empire's tyranny, now turned their gaze to humanity, unsure of what their future held but fully aware of the consequences of defying them. The humans had demonstrated their might, their intelligence, and their unbreakable will. But this new era wasn't about vengeance. It was about survival. Humanity, once fractured and scattered, now understood the importance of unity. They had learned from their past mistakes, from the war that had torn them apart, and from the Empire's attempts to eradicate them. They knew now that only through solidarity could they ensure that their future was one of prosperity, not destruction. As the first steps toward rebuilding began, the message was clear. The galaxy would never again forget the name of humanity. In the quiet of space, the final echoes of the conflict faded. The humans had reclaimed what was once theirs, not through blind destruction, but through the strength of their will, their innovation, and their unity. The stars no longer felt so cold, for humanity had returned to them, not as survivors, but as rulers, reclaiming their place in the galaxy once lost, but now theirs forever. The Empire was gone. The galaxy had been forever changed, and humanity's journey, reborn from the ashes of war, was just beginning.